Hey, this is Rick Kaselj from exercisesforinjuries.com. I'm here with another video interview for you, and today we're going to kind of talk about metabolic training, what metabolic training is and how it can help you. So on the line or on the video who I have with me is Kate V from New York. So I'll get Kate to introduce herself and then we'll get into the questions. Awesome. So Kate, give people a little bit of a background who you are, because I know you're a misplaced individual from a different country in a new country doing an odd thing. So maybe you can give people a little bit of background on who you are.
Okay. I know that didn't really come across as my best New York accent. So if you didn't guess already, I'm actually originally from Australia. I grew up down under and I went to university there. So I studied science and I majored in sports science. And back about 4.5 years ago, I decided to move across to New York. And that's where my hybrid New York accent kind of comes in a little bit here. I've been here about 4.5 years, like I said, and I've been working primarily as an exercise physiologist and as a trainer in the Upper East Side. So I'm training primarily one-on-one setting and working online also with a new program I have, push a great number of people and help them. And that's kind of why I came online originally. But it was also great to work on my programs and helping people in the Upper East Side achieve their fallest results and get some great fun training programs happening.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, and what we were going to chat about was metabolic training. So maybe you can talk about like what is metabolic training and what is the benefits of metabolic training.
Sure. I mean, if you go to any gym, everyone defines metabolic training as something different. It's one of those terms that's been thrown around quite a bit lately. Some places it could be, throwing some battling ropes or some kettlebell swings, or even other people could just call it intervals on the treadmill. It's all of these and above. It encompasses a lot of different exercises. But the main thing about metabolic training is that you're working in certain circuits in non-competing sets, meaning you're hitting different muscle groups and having an incomplete rest period, meaning you don't fully recover, so that you burn a maximum amount of calories in a shorter time frame, which in turn boosts the afterburn effect, which means when you stop training and you go home and you're sitting on the couch, your body's still recovering and you're still burning through calories, which to me is pretty damn awesome because you're burning calories post-workout and you're getting stronger, you're getting leaner, you're getting better conditioned. And that in turn helps you to accelerate your fat loss results. But really with these metabolic training intervals, the most important thing is the intensity and the duration, okay? Because you can hit different energy systems and predominantly use different energy systems based on the duration of your training. And that's kind of where the metabolic training comes in, is that you can elicit different responses and hit different energy pathways by changing up the intensity and the duration of those intervals. So the way it becomes effective for fat loss, and one of the benefits is that when you combine different energy systems and you combine different time work periods with different time rest periods to optimize your energy production, but also to minimize that amount of time that you spend at the gym. So you're really burning the maximum amount of calories, burning tons of fat, and helping you to accelerate your results.
Okay. So then what would be some of the mistakes that people end up making when it comes to training to kind of increase their metabolism or to kind of work in that to do metabolic training?
Sure. So, people make a lot of mistakes, and I think one of the biggest mistakes, particularly when you start to do metabolic workouts that don't just traditionally involve the treadmill or the bike, is that people start picking exercises that they can't actually do, and then trying to do them in a circuit.
But that you bring up a good point that person might see an exercise on TV or on the internet. They might do it. It might feel hard to them, but it might be way too advanced of an exercise, and it's hard because they're so inefficient in doing that exercise, but they're not able to kind of reach that point when it comes to doing that a high enough intensity in order to get the benefit from the exercise.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that is the reason why that one is one of the number one reasons why. And that then turns into, people taking it too far and not bringing enough intensity to the workout. So, you flip from someone picking the wrong exercise to someone then picking something that's a little bit too easy and thinking that they can just continue through a rest period. Because if you skip your rest breaks and you don't bring enough intensity, then you're not going to create that same metabolic effect as you would by choosing that right exercise, bringing the intensity to the right level that you need to take a rest. I find people, particularly runners, this one, you go out to do an interval running workout and you're trying to bring intensity, but you're not sprinting or you're not going fast enough. So you think, oh, well, I'll just keep on trotting, I'll just keep running. I don't need to take a break. And in the end, it turns everything back into the exact thing you're trying to avoid, which is that steady state workout or cardio.
Okay, good. I like that because you see that in the gym. Let's say, I mean, we end up having all kinds of exercise, like an isolation exercise that might be good for rehab, or for a specific population. You start getting into more of compound exercise, and then you get more of those compound loaded exercise. And a lot of people just aren't at that point where they can end up doing that compound loaded exercise. It's a good point. I like that. Now, so that ends up being the mistake that people make. Now, how can people end up taking this? How can people plug this into their program, this metabolic training into their programs in order to get more results based upon what they're looking for? If they're looking for cardiovascular or increasing their metabolism or increasing their fat loss results.
So it really comes down to how many days a week you can train. How much time do you really have? Because if you're short on time and you only have, like I recommend you need to be training at least 3 days a week. That's like the minimum. Just regular training, not even metabolic training. You need to be doing workouts 3 days a week just to get a good steady baseline, to be getting results, particularly when you're starting out as a beginner. If you're more advanced, 3 times a week is going to maintain where you're at. You need to be bumping it up and adding in, a fifth day to be getting the faster results and to be breaking through those plateaus as you progress. But, you want to be adding these kinds of circuits in either to replace your intervals and your cardio workouts in a workout, or by using them as like an off-day conditioning workout. So instead of going and doing, your 30 minutes on the treadmill or even, 30 minutes on the bike, whatever it is, changing that out and incorporating these metabolic circuits into those days of your training program.
Okay, so you'd plug these into your program, or these would be done on your off days?
Well, you could do either or. Like I said, it depends how many days a week that you're working out. I'd say if you're working out 3 days a week, you could add these into your program, into the actual workouts and replace the intervals you would do in that workout. If you're doing more than 3 days a week, I would use them as off-day conditioning. It just helps you to complement the rest of your program and transfers the same movements into your strength training. So that's one of the benefits. Look at a
Okay. And okay. And then looking at the clients that you've ended up training, like what are some of the results that they've ended up getting from kind of adding this metabolic training to their programs?
Well, the first thing is a lot of people, when I started training them, they've been training a long time already. So it wasn't the same as when you start initially working out. So these types of training, it's more for intermediate people and advanced people because when you're just starting out, just doing any kind of exercise is going to have a positive effect. If you do it right and you follow the plan, you are going to get results when you first start. So this type of training, I target more towards intermediate and advanced people that have been training a while. They know the moves and they have this base fitness and they have um, either reached a plateau in their fat loss or their goals, or they're just bored as hell doing intervals. And to be honest, it's boring sometimes, and that's where I started using this to try and spice things up. There's people who were saying to me, "Listen, I'm bored with this. I've done this for so long. Oh, this again." And when people start getting bored, they don't want to come back and train. They get sick of it. And these types of workouts were just a great challenge, and it's just something new to add in. And I've seen more more results with the females. They've really embraced this style of um, more intensity and more intense training. One of my clients who's 53, when we first started doing this type of metabolic training, she lost 2 dress sizes. I mean, she was very small already. She wasn't overweight. She wasn't strong as well. When we first started, she gained a lot of strength. She had bad sciatic problems, and just working around that was initially troublesome. But then once we figured it out and we got her body strong, adding in this metabolic conditioning was way more effective than say if you just started out with that. So it's important to have that base of strength, and if you have that all the movement patterns down, and like we said before, you select the right exercises and you structure the circuits and the complexes correctly, you can create a metabolic effect that far outweighs any other type of cardio training. But another success story that I had was a female who's 63 years old who broke through her plateau. She lost the last 5 pounds, and they're the most annoying and frustrating because it just sticks around. It's it just doesn't seem to go away, and it gets people frustrated. But she's 63 years old, and she can totally kick butt. When we first started working together, she couldn't run, she couldn't jump rope, she couldn't do burpees, and now she can do all 3 in a session and totally destroy it. So again, another thing is, it doesn't matter how old you are. I have a lot of clients, most of them are over 50 years old, and if they can do these types of workouts and you structure it correctly and you follow the plan, there's no reason to not get amazing results.
Okay. And so looking at this metabolic training, it's not where someone brand new should start off with. They end up getting a foundation when it comes to their strength, the foundation when it comes to their cardiovascular. Then they kind of implement this metabolic training. Maybe you can give us an example of like a beginner metabolic training program, like someone who has the foundations of training and now they're trying to ramp it up to that next level by adding some metabolic training. What would be an example of a program?
Sure, I would suggest initially, if people have built their foundation of strength, is starting out with some kind of body weight intervals. I think body weight is a great place to start because if you can't move your body in all the different movement patterns efficiently, then you have no business adding a ton of weight to any of those movement patterns. You're going to end up getting hurt, or you're just not going to create that metabolic effect like I was talking about before. So initially, I think setting up
And I mean, if you end up having a smartphone, there's all kinds of little apps that you can download that'll help you with those interval things. That's what I've learned. And then like, is this a program that I kind of, where would I put it in within my program? Like,
Yeah, so you add it in as like an off-day conditioning
okay,
type of circuit.
okay,
So it's a great, like I said, it's a complement to your current training program. If you're getting results, if you're enjoying your program, you don't have to trash it and start all over again, which I think is really cool because sometimes it's just a little tweak and people want to start doing all these fancy things and start a brand new program when really you're maybe like just like that far, you can say, yeah, that far off getting results and all you need to do is turn the wrench a little more and you're going to get the results that you've been working so hard for. But people think, oh my God, I'm not, it's not working, I have to start all over again. You don't. You just have to tweak things a little bit and you have to experiment and you have to be willing to try different types of movements and different workouts, like in an interval sense. Like, you know, getting away from that mindset of the cardio being the only way and the mindset of giving, you know, it's all about trading your time for results. Because I think people get trapped by this idea that you have to trade, you know, on your off day, you have to go do 30 minutes of cardio, and if you don't do 30 minutes, it's not going to work. It's really about the intensity you bring. And if you bring the right intensity every time you go and do one of these workouts, you're most definitely going to see results because your body is always going to be adapting. It's always going to be having that boost to your metabolism, and it's going to be greater each time. It doesn't plateau.
okay. And that ends up being all of my questions. Now, did you have any last minute points that you want to leave people with about metabolic training, or is there a question that I didn't ask you?
Oh, sorry, could you just repeat that? It just got a bit fuzzy.
Okay. Um, so that's all of my questions. Is there any last minute points you want to leave with people, or is there a question that I didn't ask you that you'd like to answer?
Well, there's no more questions. I mean, it all sounds great, the questions that you asked me. It's I'll ask myself a question and answer it. I don't know.
I leave that at the end because sometimes there's uh, a point that someone that I'm interviewing wants to share, and then I haven't exactly asked a specific question when it relates to that, but they want to say it. So another way of saying it is we all have our personal rants, and we all are looking for that opportunity to release that rant. So I don't know if you have a training rant or something that really drives you crazy that you'd like to share, so that the world stops making that mistake.
Listen, I think the most important thing, no, I mean, everyone rants, of course, but I think the most important thing that people need to remember is their training intensity.
Yeah.
That one thing they need to really focus on is hitting the right intensity, but also learning how to listen to your body. Because there's two different types of pain. You know, it's the injury type of pain and there's the pain of intensity. And that's just you pushing your body. And I feel that some people, they just clump the both of them together. And sometimes you just need to know, okay, this is burning my legs, not because they're actually on fire. It's just the muscles are working. I'm in that position, and it's just temporary.
The pain of intensity.
Well, it's
That's awesome.
yeah, it's good, right?
That's really good.
But it is, and it's a pain. It's not like going for a nice Sunday bike ride down the street and there's no ice creams involved. It's work and it's hard. And if you structure it right, and if you, like I said, set up your metabolic complexes, have them so that you're doing different movement patterns which hit different muscles and cycling through all of those different movements so that you're not just killing one specific muscle group at a time, you're going to see way more results, but you're
Okay, then what do you suggest when it comes to intensity? Like, how can people measure or quantify or track intensity?
Well, I mean, some people use their heart rate monitors. And if you have a heart rate monitor, that's great. It's going to definitely, there's certain zones that you can monitor. But, I think it's really personal. Like some days you feel like you're going to die before you even go into a workout. So, in terms of the intensity that day is obviously going to be very relative to how you feel. But, I think the best way to measure intensity is on the scale of 1 to 10. If you are being honest with yourself and you can say, okay, I am at a 9 out of 10 right now, where you feel that your lungs are burning and you feel your legs are burning, that's how you know you're at your max. But initially, if you're not sure how to measure your intensity, and if you're doing a spinning class as well, I recommend getting a heart rate monitor, because you could be at a spinning class and you think you're going really hard, but actually your heart rate is staying pretty steady. And that is just, you're fooling yourself into thinking you're doing an interval sprint workout when your heart rate is sticking around that same intensity the whole time. So, heart rate monitor, or just relatively speaking, if you're doing hill sprints and your legs are burning, then you're doing a high intensity.
Okay. Okay, Kate, where can people get more information about you?
Sure. So you can come across to phallosaccelerators.com. We've got tons of awesome tips and workouts available that will help you to accelerate your phallus results. And it's also, fun and challenging. Save a ton of time. You don't need, loads of equipment, and it's just awesome times.
Okay. So thank you very much, Kate, for your time.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I really appreciate it.
No
Also, I
problem.
forgot to mention, if you want to come onto YouTube, there's lots of fun stuff happening on YouTube as well, and Facebook and Twitter and all those other social networks. We're all over the place, Rick.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you very much for joining Kate and myself on this interview. I hope you've left with some tips and things that you can do in order to kind of improve your workouts. Now, make sure you swing by exercisesforinjuries.com, enter in your pain or injury. There's a good chance that I have an article or a video that'll end up helping you out. Secondly, if you're watching this on YouTube, head up above, hit subscribe. What that'll do is every couple days you'll end up getting a video from myself where I end up talking about injury or pain, or you'll end up getting an interview like this with one of my friends that I in the health and fitness realm. Thirdly, head down below, hit like, and leave a question for myself or Kate. We'll get back to you. We'll make sure we get back to you and answer your questions. And lastly, if you're listening to this on iTunes, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and you'll get updates when there's new interviews like this. So that's it. This is Rick Kaselj from Vancouver, Canada, and Kate V from New York saying take care and bye-bye.